Please give a round of applause to Sten Tamkivi.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm extremely glad to be back in Riga, and wanted to thank the conference and Dagnia especially for the persistence of getting me back here. I think I've been here in the last 6 months way more than I have in the last 3. But before I get going on this topic of human mobility, just a quick question. How many of you have lived in more than one city in your lifetime? Which is roughly, I would say, 92%. So my point, or what I want to talk to you about today is this notion that you're normal. This is actually the life that you just mentioned or revealed that you have been living, that you have not stayed put for your entire life. This has become a standard of living, and it starts with certain segments of users and certain types of jobs that are becoming much more mobile faster than ever before, but it's a global trend. So I will tell you a little bit about that. I will start by discussing a bit of why do people move around, and then tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Teleport in order to make it even easier for them. And the fun thing is that while we're helping other people, we gather, as a typical software startup, we capture a lot of data. So I'd like to show you a few things about that we've learned about this human mobility and what's happening, and come back to this point of cities competing for citizens, and this sort of a global war of talent going on in practice. The thing that drives human mobility is the fact that modern work can be done anywhere. It used to be that the job was a place. Like people were thinking when they said that they're going to go to work, they actually meant the physical place. It was an office and it was a physical building in a physical town, and that's what job meant. Today, what has happened, a massive shift that we're seeing, is the fact that your income is becoming completely location independent. Like, it used to be that only large multinational corporations can have clients abroad. Now, even the tiniest 2-person, 3-person consulting shop can serve clients in other countries. Even single individuals can do remote work. You can be a software developer. You can be an online marketeer. You can be a designer and work with clients wherever. And it started with all these knowledge-based industries, or places where people are moving bits instead of atoms, like this sort of places where information is the thing they create or they share or they distribute. That's the most obvious thing, that then if you're dealing with information doesn't have a location, ergo you don't have to have a location. But now it's also getting into the physical space. Like if a single artisan builds handicraft and puts it and sells it on Etsy, basically their income becomes global as well. So it doesn't really matter if he has or she has clients in their own village. An effect of that, on the other side, you have people that decide that they can change their location. Okay, my location, my income doesn't tie me down, so where could I be? And when talking to Teleport users, we've seen a number of reasons that people tell us. Startup people, founders, they say that, hey, I want to go to a place where I can bootstrap longer. Let me go to somewhere, if I'm in San Francisco, let me move to East Bay because the rent is 2 times lower and I can live longer on my cash. People go elsewhere to find other people to work with, to hire people. Entrepreneurs go to, they might go to Ukraine to hire software developers, they might go to London to hire a graphic designer, and they will form this international team, and there's a lot of location movement there. Once you have a team, you occasionally want to get together with them. Building Skype, by the time we got to 200 people, we already had 10 locations. So it was like a crazy distributed early organization in early 2000s. So what we learned then was that you can build human relations by sitting in the same room, and then you can maintain them over video calls later. But you can't do the opposite. So you will be moving in order to get together with the team. If you're serving some other companies, you have places where your employees are, and then you have places where your clients are. So that's a place where you're going to spend some time. When you do that long enough, and my peak year has been that I did 74 trips 1 year. And we had this joke at Skype that we fly so you wouldn't have to. And we were really hitting the road. And once you do that for a while, then you realize that maybe a place you should live at would be a good connected place. So you start to look at, okay, where are the cities that I need to be in, and pick a place that has the best airline connectivity to all those places. we're hearing all the time about teleport users who are looking for a particular regulatory environment. Like if you're building a startup that deals with Bitcoin and drones, probably you shouldn't be in Manhattan. Probably there is some place that has a clearer regulation and a little bit relaxed flying atmosphere so that you can build a product. And last but not least, if your work doesn't lock you down in a place, you can finally live where you want to. So the quality of life aspects start to play a much bigger role. A software developer who used to go skiing once a year can actually move to the mountain and code from there and go skiing every day as long as there's snow. And you can make decisions based on your health needs, your climate preferences, and so forth. So the bottom line is that you are able to live a much more fulfilling life thanks to this technological shift. Another key insight that we found that, while building Teleport, that there is not a single best place. It just doesn't exist. For me personally, the last 3 years I spent mostly in California, spending my summers in Europe. Now, last summer we switched with our family back to Estonia. Now I live in Tallinn, but I'm back in California every second month. So it's like this combination, and there are different places that meet different requirements. And interestingly enough, when I was talking to European startup founders maybe 5, 7 years ago, they were using, the language they were using was that, okay, I'm here in Croatia, I'm contemplating should I move to London or not. That same person today uses different language. What they say is that I'm here in Croatia, I'm thinking how much time should I spend in London and how much time should I spend in San Francisco? And this little subtle change actually shows how people are thinking of sort of their, not a place, but the portfolio of places. Like, should I be in this other metropole for 2 weeks a quarter, or maybe 2 months a year, or maybe not at all. Like these are the choices that people make about places, and it's way more than this, what our parents' generation thought of as like, okay, I'm moving, and that means moving a house every 7 years on average, or something like that. We're talking about moves that happen maybe 5 times a year, and people even don't think about them as moves. So this is the question. This is the question that the modern knowledge worker will have. This is the problem that they have and we're solving, which is they want to move to their best place to live and work. And there are 2 key components about that. There is this your best place. So there's a discovery issue, like where should you be? And there's a myriad of preferences and things that go into that. And then there's the move bit. So as a software team, we looked at this and said that, okay, we can do kind of things on both sides. And the first thing we built, almost the first thing, the first big thing we released, and this is a product that has been out on the market since last April now. We have a tool that allows knowledge workers to go in, tell us their preferences, and on the other side, we scan and index the world. Currently, we cover about 150 cities with 180 dimensions of data, and then we match you to the best places. So we'll show you how the world will look like through your lens, and how if you move to Berlin, this is what your budget would look like, and if you move to Rome instead, this is what you would be missing. So this is what our software basically does. And I'm briefly explaining it just because while our users do all these things, and now we've had this product out for a year, we now today have about 120,000 user accounts. A super high percentage of them actually converts into full profiles. So we know who they are, where they're coming from, how much money do they make today, how much do they pay for housing, what their preferences are, what are the matches. And of course, we are very keen on the privacy of our users and promise them not to share individually those details. But it starts to give us some super interesting insights of how the broader communities think. What are the geographical differences in those preferences? What are the things that come up in search? On the left there, this is just an excerpt. This is a list of most popular current job types. So there's a whole lot of students that have found us, and there's a whole lot of other people, which is our failure to still know who our users, all of them are. Especially when we had this amazing surprise in Paris during the week of the terror attacks. We had a massive influx of French users. So there is this horrible, horrible thing that happens in one place, and all of a sudden the entire class of young people goes into the psyche of, oh, am I at the right place now? Maybe I should be somewhere else. And we had this influx of French users, many of them were other, and they started asking for layers about wine and cheese, for example, and all these surprises that led us to evolve the product. We have a lot of startup founders, software engineers, marketeers, designers, knowledge workers, as I mentioned before. So this is one data point that I just wanted to share with you, which I personally found surprising. Like typically when you talk about migration, like especially in Europe today, I know in Latvia as well, in Estonia, amongst those European countries, mostly when somebody says migration, people hear refugee. And the people who don't have a clue about how the world works hear terrorist. And this has made this entire topic of human migration and finding your best place enormously more complex for completely irrational reasons, like these fears, these unanswered questions, this fear of the unknown and how big, bad the world is. When we started researching for Teleport 3 years ago, at that time, the share of people who are on the move because they are escaping something horrible, like war or death, was about 7 or 8% of all people moving. So it's a minor slice or a subset of the people on the move. Now it has ballooned to 40 million people, but let me tell you, it's still just a minority. And out of the people on the move as a refugee, still a very small subset are something that you could categorize easily as a terrorist or something as a threat to your culture or whatever. So people have this very misguided view of the migration patterns in the world, which is something I think we can change and which is important. But the other thing that I've heard about these economic migrants, and there is a lot of literature in the world about migration that only looks at economic migration through the lens of cash. Okay, if you move to another place, then you will make more money and you will probably spend a little bit more money, so how much is your bottom line? And that is definitely important. Like this equation, like how much better your bottom line will be is still something that makes people to move around. And this is a core of the Teleport products as well. But since the beginning, we've said that this is not the only thing. Like people care about other things. They care about the quality of the restaurant, the density of jazz clubs. They care about where their friends are, where their relatives are. All this hundreds and hundreds of preferences and parameters that are quite more subjective. And so this chart that you see on the screen right now, this is what we call sticky preferences. So we looked at our first 100,000 users searching, and they've completed somewhere between 600,000 and 700,000 searches. So there's a sizable chunk of data already. And we looked at when they search for several times, what are the preferences that they don't change? Like people fiddle with, oh, what happens if I turn this on? And what if I actually remove this? I don't like pollution or traffic or this thing. So for 70% of our knowledge worker users, the number one preference that they change is low pollution. Has nothing to do with money. Now, recently, it used to be that the second one was something about physical security. Now the living costs has risen to number 2. So I guess we're approaching what the migration literature was saying before. But low crime, the fact that when you're picking a new place to live, that you actually want to be physically secure is number 3 on this list. And most interesting for me, tolerance is number 4. And think about it, like if you're a knowledge worker, if you're somebody who is so skillful that what they do can be done anywhere. They speak the languages, they probably have the passport that allows them to move. All these things, and it doesn't matter if you come from US or Latvia or Syria, if you're in that category, the last thing you want to have is somebody shouting at you in the bus or insulting your children or something idiotic that we see happening in Europe here and there. So this is like we have material proof that tolerance matters. Like it's not a soft issue in these societies, but it actually does matter. And then we get to rent cost and lively startup scene. We measure that in, for example, availability of VC capital and the number of startups created. That just signals the tilt of our current user base. People care about healthcare. Again, walkability, bikeability, as well as low pollution is pretty high on the list. So we're getting into some of those surprises already. This is what the users want. And now the way we've started to think about the world is a marketplace where on one side you have this demand. These are talented people roaming the planet looking for the best place to make the most of their potential. when there is demand, there is the supply side. On the other side are the cities and governments and countries who are trying to attract people. Everybody's trying to get their tax revenue up. Everybody hears from the local employers that they need talented labor. Every single country in the world is saying that, yes, we need more smart people in this country. And some of them try to solve it by making babies, some create e-residency programs, and some others invite immigrants in. Every single country does that. And now, all of a sudden, it comes out that Teleport is running this marketplace where on one side we have the demand for environments, on the other side we have the supply. And so we can take all of our preferences, all of the data sets, the 180 dimensions, and start plotting all kinds of charts and see where do countries win, and our unit of management mostly tends to be a city. In a smaller country, city and country might be quite similar, but in the larger country, like nobody says that I'm moving to China from Europe. Everybody says that I'm moving from Europe to Hong Kong or Shanghai, or you move to a city. The same with US. Nobody's moving to the United States of America from Europe. Everybody's moving to New York or San Francisco or Austin or some of those hubs, depending what they need. And so we can look at the cities and we can start pulling out the data. And I won't have time to bore you with much of that, but I just pulled out a little something where on one axis we have what we created a very quick index of living cost balance with with the cost of living. So if you have a great environment and it's really expensive, then you're sort of mediocre. But you have a great environment, but it's cheap, then you have a better balance. So that's the vertical axis there. And on the horizontal axis, we plotted a number of business parameters. So you could say that one axis is life and the other axis is work. And now we plotted all the cities, and taking a hypothetical person who cares about all of these things, who doesn't exist, we can plot the world. And then we can zoom in and we can see where particular cities are. And then we can see where they are positioned well or less well, and we can start understanding what components of those indexes actually drive that change. So in this, I just wanted to include this particular picture because a lot of time, even today, several people have asked me or referred to something about, okay, so what's different in Tallinn versus Riga, and what's the startup scene like, and all these things. Sure, there are differences, but if you really zoom out to the world, we're still a friendly little happy cluster here. So it doesn't, don't worry about this sort of Baltic competition that much. But you can start quantifying that, okay, Moscow is doing quite nice on something, but probably the pricing actually drives it way off balance than it could be. And Singapore, London, San Francisco, surprisingly, we talk a lot about the San Franciscan sort of tech miracle, but on the axis of business environment and startup scene, actually London and Singapore have not fallen way or have caught up quite nicely. And you can start understanding some of the competitive dynamics between those. So this is something that I just wanted to share, how you have these global migration flows that have been very badly mapped, very badly understood, and most of the government marketing, when they talk about attracting talent, attracting startups, attracting foreign investors, it's still super old school. Like it's people print brochures and go to a fair and hope to meet the right person. And now, thanks to software, like what Uber is doing to cars and eBay is doing has been doing for peer-to-peer commerce and all these things, we're actually having this citizens and cities matchmaking now becoming digital, and that opens up all these wonderful ways how you can reach just the right people and understand what you should really, for example, as a city, improve in your policies. Like, how bad is the issue that your public transportation is not as good as the neighbors? Like, what does it mean to migration? Just to conclude, I promised to show you that you're normal. These are the high-level numbers. I just want to leave you with those. What does migration in the world look like? There are about 3.5 billion jobs in the world. And out of the approaching 8 billion people, but 3.5 billion actually work, so they are not retired and they're not children. And out of those, there is about 700 million who are doing some kind of knowledge work. They fall into the categories that I've been discussing above. In a similar ballpark today, there is about 680 million people in the world who in some way or form work remotely. Probably to get to that high number, realistically, it probably means that people who have one conference call a week count, like they still have an office and all that. But they have some element of remote work in what they do. So you can take this sort of a nice 20% of the global jobs are getting into that direction. As another benchmark, interestingly, in the same ballpark, right this moment, there are 665 million people looking for a job. And when you survey them, and when there was a recent survey for about 20,000 of them, which came back with the result that 2/3 of them, if offered, would consider a job abroad. So 64% of them. So you get to this 420 million. And so it's hard to get the good numbers, but we're sort of overlapping and analyzing these different directions. We come to a conclusion that today there's probably 350 million, or 10% of the global workforce, is doing a job that would allow them to roam free, plus they have some other skills like an English language skill or something like that on top of that that would make it easier for them. So that's sort of for Teleport, that's our user base. For the cities looking to increase their talent pool, that's their user base as well. As a comparison point, the UN numbers for the number of people in the world who today live in a country other than the one they were born in is 232 million. And we believe that statistic is outdated and old and doesn't account for many people that are actually on the move. But still, you can see that we are not sort of off the map with these estimates as well on the other side. And what's interesting about it is that Teleport today, when we look at our user base, the median salary is $32,000 a year, which is an interesting data point. So it's for downtown New York or San Francisco means it's not the high salary. For a lot of Europe, it's a pretty high salary, but that's the median. So if you take 350 million people on the move and multiply it by $32,000, you get that when these people move, they will dislocate $1.75 trillion of economic value. $1.75 trillion. Because when you move, it's like a complete reset of all your consumption habits. You will start paying taxes to a new government. You will start paying your rent to a new landlord. You will start buying groceries in a new store. You will put money in a new pension fund because this stuff doesn't travel across international borders still. And so this is sort of the power that this knowledge workers and this talent pool holds by choosing where they should be. And this is exactly why I think the cities and governments in the world, the smarter ones already do, but every single one of them has to care to create environments that these people actually want, because this is the only way you can succeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any question time? I don't.
Thank you very much. Well, that's a very, very interesting presentation. And I feel this presentation on a personal basis because I decided to move from the country I was living to another one, and it's from Paris to Brussels. I'm not sure I made a good choice, but it was very inspiring. I've got just a quick question. Don't you think that providing that kind of services and opportunity, everybody will end up living in the same place?
No, I don't. We had a hypothesis that people actually have a way more, and maybe this ties into this reputation theme of the conference actually, is that today when migration happens, people don't have much to lead themselves on, and the high-level brands matter a lot. So when you think of moving to the UK, you think of London. When you think of moving to Germany, you think of Berlin. Like that's sort of, I think the current situation is rather concentrating. Now, when we can start exposing the data and surface cities by merit, all of a sudden it comes out that maybe all the characteristics that you mix and match, and you want to be somewhere in the Netherlands, and Amsterdam looked like a great place. Now it might be that, oh, well, Eindhoven has a better balance of cost and logistics and whatever things. So I think what will happen is that more obscure long-tail places can surface because of this, it's becoming more data-driven. But of course, the reputation matters as well. Like when you get this result, you need to actually trust that you would like to live there. And today, just to give one data point, the usual suspects of San Francisco, New York, London, Singapore, all these big cities, big brand name cities, are the highest ranking Teleport search results. But our finding was that these cities are in top 10 for just 30% of our users. So even when they're at the top, there is 70% of users who don't see them as their top. So that long tail is already forming, and people are finding Chisinau and Tartu, Estonia, and sometimes we get mail that, hey, you guys have Estonian roots, that's why you're pushing Tartu, which is a city I'm from, but that's an accident, that's data-driven.
That's great, thank you very much, Sten. We don't have time. Thank you.